On Friday, May 2nd, 2025, Israel launched a series of airstrikes on Syria, reportedly the heaviest this year amid tensions with the Druze minority. The strikes came after recent sectarian clashes between Druze fighters and Syrian forces, and following an apparent drone strike that killed 4 Druze fighters in Sweden. Israeli military spokesman Avichai Adre said the strikes were a clear message to the government to not harm the Druze minority. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz also issued a joint statement saying that they would not allow forces to be sent south of Damascus or any threat to the Druze community. Syria's presidency condemned the strike as a dangerous escalation against state institutions and accused Israel of destabilizing the country. Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the Israeli strike as a violation of Syria's sovereignty, and the unmandated Independent Commission of Inquiry on Syria expressed concern at the deadly clashes with sectarian dimension. After the clashes, a deal was agreed between Druze representatives and the government to de-escalate the situation, prompting troop deployment in Sana'a, tighter security around Jeramana. Syria's government said the agreement also included the immediate surrender of heavy weapons. However, a German foreign ministry statement said that Syria must not become the venue for regional tensions to be played out. Israel has attacked hundreds of military sites in Syria since Islamist-led forces deposed longtime President Bashar al-Assad in December, and has also sent troops into the demilitarized buffer zone that used to separate Israeli and Syrian forces in the Golan. The latest violence follows massacres of Alawites in March, when the observatory said the security forces and their allies killed more than 1,700 civilians. The government accused Assad loyalists of sparking the violence and launched an inquiry. The situation in Syria remains volatile, and the latest airstrikes are just one example of the ongoing tension in the country. The fate of the Druze minority, in particular, remains uncertain as they face threats from both the government and radical Islamist groups. Israel launched a barrage of strikes on Syria on Friday, military installations across the country, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The attacks were reportedly in response to recent sectarian clashes between Druze fighters and Syrian forces, which killed more than 100 people in Jeramana in Sana'a near Damascus and in Swida. The Syrian government accused Israel of escalating the conflict and destabilizing the region. The Israeli military said that the strikes were a clear message to the government not to harm the Druze minority. The Israeli Prime Minister and Defense Minister also issued a joint statement condemning the violence and calling for a de-escalation. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also condemned the Israeli strikes as a violation of Syria's sovereignty. The United Nations mandated Independent Commission of Inquiry on Syria expressed concern about the deadly clashes with sectarian dimension and said that Israeli air strikes increase the risk to civilians. The strike came after a deal was agreed between Druze representatives and the government to de-escalate the situation. Syrian officials said that the agreement also included the immediate surrender of heavy weapons, although this was not witnessed by an AFP photographer. The tensions between the Druze minority and the Syrian government have been ongoing since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011. The Druze community has been targeted by extremist groups and has been involved in several conflicts with the government. The latest violence follows massacres of Alawites in March, in which the Syrian government accused Assad loyalists of sparking the violence and launching an inquiry. The government also accused Israel of supporting the opposition and interfering in the Syrian conflict. The Israeli government has maintained that it is targeting Iranian-backed militias in Syria and that the strikes are necessary to prevent them from establishing a presence near the Golan Heights. The Israeli military spokesman Avichai Adre said that the strikes were a clear message to the new rulers of Syria and that Israel will not allow forces to be sent south to Damascus or any threat to the Druze community. The Israeli government has also expressed concern about the presence of Russian forces in Syria and their support for the Syrian government. Israel launched new strikes on Syria on May 2, 2025, targeting military targets across the country. The strikes were in response to recent sectarian clashes and the loyalty of Druze clerics and archfactions to Damascus. The Israeli military denied any involvement in the attack, but the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that more than 20 strikes took place on the region. The strikes came after Druze fighters and Syrian forces clashed in Jeramana, Sana'a, near Damascus, and Sweden, the heartland of the Druze religious group. The observatory said that 4 Druze fighters were killed in an apparent drone strike in Sweden. But it was unclear who carried out the attack. The Israeli military said that the strike were a clear message to Syria's new rulers not to harm the Druze minority. The strikes were the heaviest barrage this year, according to the observatory. The Syrian presidency condemned the Israeli strike as a dangerous escalation against state institutions and accused Israel of destabilizing the country. The unmandated Independent Commission of Inquiry on Syria also expressed concern at the deadly clashes with sectarian dimensions and said Israeli airstrike increased the risk to civilians. The Syrian government said that outlaw groups were behind the violence, but the observatory and Druze residents said that forces affiliated with the new authorities attacked Jeramana and Sinai and clashed with Druze gunmen. The unrest was sparked by the circulation of an audio recording attributed to a Druze citizen and deemed blasphemous. The observatory reported that 100 people were killed in the fighting between Druze fighters and Syrian forces. The Syrian government has roots in the al-Qaeda jihadist network and has vowed inclusive rule in the multi-confessional, multi-ethnic country, but must also contend with internal pressures from radical Islamists. The latest violence follows massacres of Alawites in March, when the observatory said the security forces and their allies killed more than 1,700 civilians, whereas the